Have you ever witnessed arrogance reach its peak? Where a powerful CEO with a glamorous facade openly disdains a woman purely out of prejudice, completely unaware that she holds the key to his empire's destiny. The story you're about to hear isn't just a spectacular comeback. It's a profound lesson on power justice and the steep price of pride. Join Beat Stories as we uncover the journey of Ava Sterling, the finance queen who, with her intellect and composure, brought down $1 billion corporation with one unexpected move. Will Terra Nova Technologies rise from the ashes, and what terrifying consequences will Marcus Thorne face? If you're ready for a story filled with drama, emotion, and deep lessons about life and business, don't hesitate. Subscribe to Beat Stories now and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next inspiring and powerful narratives. The May dawn slowly bled across the reinforced glass window painting the Tribeca penthouse in New York with a golden hue. The silence was unusually profound, broken only by the steady hum of the coffee machine, a rhythmic meditation. Ava Sterling was in no hurry. At 45, her every movement was honed by decades of experience imbued with purpose and composure. The room mirrored her essence, luxurious, refined, yet utterly unpretentious. Modern, deeply thoughtful artworks were meticulously arranged, a striking contrast to the hollow superficiality often found among the elite. Ava took a sip of her rich, dark coffee, its aroma swirling in the air. Her bespoke charcoal suit, sharply cut, draped elegantly over her slender yet resolute frame. A single unique Tahitian pearl necklace with its silvery gray luster provided just enough accent without overpowering. This was the soft power style she had meticulously researched and cultivated, an invisible yet incredibly effective armor in the silent battles of the corporate world. She scrolled through her tablet, rereading the final summary on Terra Nova Technologies. Over $2 billion in investment, a colossal sum even for Sterling Capital Group. The investment fund she had built from the ground up, now managing tens of billions in assets. But today that number was merely a small piece of a much larger puzzle. Ava wasn't just here to invest. She was here to investigate. Hundreds of times throughout her 20-year career, she had been Ava. The ambitious young black woman, a brilliant Wharton graduate, yet always mistaken for an administrative assistant, subjected to skeptical questions about her financial acumen, or viewed as a diversity token rather than an equal partner. Every scornful glance, every dismissive sneer, every ill-timed joke felt like needles pricking her skin. But these were also the relentless fuel that drove her to build her own empire, where core values and equity were the guiding principles, not just profit. Today isn't about money, Ava, she whispered to herself, her resolute gaze glinting through the delicate frames of her glasses. Today is about change. Meanwhile, in the heart of Manhattan, Terra Nova Technologies' glass and steel edifice towered into the sky. Its impressive architecture, reflecting the dazzling sunlight, stood like an impregnable monument to technological success. But hidden beneath that polished facade was a suffocating atmosphere, a corporate culture that Ava had thoroughly researched through internal reports and leaked whispers, toxic and discriminatory. Marcus Thorne, Terra Nova's CEO, emerged from his private elevator, his imposing figure draped in an expensive Italian suit. At 50, he was the embodiment of old power, arrogant, autocratic, and utterly convinced of his own superiority. His thick eyebrows were perpetually furrowed, his thin lips always poised to unleash sharp remarks. To Marcus, Terra Nova's success was proof of his conviction. Diversity was a burden, a compliance cost, rather than a core value. He strode past employees without a single nod or smile. Everyone knew that to Marcus, they were merely cogs in his money-making machine. "Is the meeting with O. Sterling ready, Kyle?" Marcus asked his assistant Kyle, a young, slender man who always kept his head bowed. Yes, sir, all ready, Kyle stammered, his voice trembling. Conference room 3, no windows, just as you requested. Marcus smirked. Good. It's just a diversity obligation meeting after all. No need for grand gestures. At the same time, in Terra Nova's main lobby, Ava stepped through the massive revolving doors. The glaring overhead lights seemed to expose everything, yet couldn't penetrate her calm demeanor. She scanned the faces around her. Most were men white in gray or navy suits. They were busy on their phones, passing each other with quick, indifferent nods. The tension in the air wasn't about work, but a subtle, underlying hierarchy. She approached the reception desk. Sophia, a young woman with a perfectly trained customer service smile, looked up. That smile faltered when she saw Ava. I have a 10 o'clock appointment with Marcus Thorne. Ava stated, her voice clear but not loud, compelling Sophia to listen. Sophia blinked. Are you here for an administrative candidate interview? HR is on the 3rd floor. Her voice betrayed clear skepticism, as if a black woman's only purpose for being there could be an administrative interview. Ava's expression remained unchanged. No, I have a direct appointment with Mr. Thorne. Ava Sterling. Sophia tapped on her screen, her eyes still filled with doubt. Please have a seat over there. She gestured towards a row of chairs in a secluded corner, not the luxurious VIP area where 2 white men were being served coffee and engaging in lively conversation. Ava nodded subtly without comment. She quietly walked to the designated chairs. Every step she took was calculated. She sat down back straight, placing her exquisite black leather brief on her lap. From this vantage point, she could observe everything: the flow of employees, the quick glances in her direction, the hushed whispers when someone noticed her, and especially the unspoken assumptions operating beneath Terra Nova's glossy surface. The clock on Ava's phone ticked past 10 hubris, then 10, 15, 10, 30. 45 minutes elapsed, a carefully calculated period, long enough to demonstrate disrespect, but not so long as to ignite conflict. It was part of the test she had outlined in her mind. Finally, Marcus's assistant Kyle appeared. He did not lead Ava to a grand executive boardroom, but to a small, windowless room, just big enough for a table and a few simple chairs. The cold, artificial light intensified the suffocating feeling. Marcus Thorne barely looked up from his phone when Ava entered. He simply gestured with his chin towards the chair opposite him, a clear sign of indifference and disrespect. 3 other executives, all white men in familiar gray suits, sat there exchanging knowing glances. One couldn't even hide a prolonged yawn. Ava immediately recognized the familiar pattern. 20 years in finance had taught her to read these signals with astonishing accuracy. Every slight, the extended wait time, the downgraded room, the curt greeting, all were as familiar as breathing. She decided to maintain her role as an observer to see how far they would push their disrespect before she revealed her true position. This wasn't just a meeting. This was a performance. And Ava Sterling was ready to be the audience before becoming the director. Marcus Thorne finally set his phone down, a dry clack, echoing in the small room, a reminder of his undeniable presence. For the first time, Marcus's gaze truly swept over Ava. It was a cursory, indifferent look, a quick, prejudiced assessment. He didn't see a powerful investor, but merely a well-dressed black woman, surely here for some political reason. So, you're here about some diversity initiative, right? Marcus's voice stretched, laced with mockery, as if this were an irksome obligation to be endured rather than a meeting between peers. Richard Hayes, sitting next to Marcus, suppressed a snicker. His contemptuous gaze flickered over Ava. Ava didn't flinch. She gently tightened her grip on the leather brief on her lap, keeping her voice as calm and clear as the cold air in the room. I'm here to discuss potential investment opportunities, Mr. Thorne. Marcus seemed unable to hide his disbelief. Right. Investment. The word investment escaped his mouth as if it carried an unbelievable connotation, a bad joke. He reached for the presentation remote, preparing for his condescending display. Let me walk you through what we do at Terra Nova. Marcus began, his eyes scanning Ava as if speaking to a slow-witted child. The slides flashed on the screen. They were designed with cartoonish graphics and simplistically naive diagrams, clearly intended for a non-expert audience. We're developing cutting-edge AI solutions for enterprise clients. He spoke overtly slowly, pausing after each basic concept. Are you following along? He asked after explaining what an algorithm was, a concept even first-year tech students already grasp. Behind Marcus, one executive whispered something to another, creating stifled giggles. Ava noted it all. The disrespect was so blatant, it didn't even need to be hidden. Ava subtly leaned forward, her sharp gaze sweeping over the screen, settling on a small line of text. Your prospectus mentions a proprietary deep learning architecture. Could you elaborate on how it differentiates from conventional transformer models, especially regarding inference latency when deployed at scale? Marcus Thorne blinked clearly, taken aback. He fumbled with the presentation remote. That's quite technical. Perhaps my chief technology officer can explain those complexities later. His eyes darted to his colleagues for support. Ava didn't relent. I'm also curious about the discrepancy in your Q2 financial report. Reported R&D expenses decreased by 22%, while you claim to have expanded research initiatives. How do those figures reconcile? Marcus's face hardened. He pressed a button to rapidly advance the slides, bypassing the financial details. I think these complex financial matters are perhaps beyond the scope of our discussion today. Perhaps we should focus on more appropriate topics, like Terra Nova's approach to diversity initiatives. His word, appropriate, hung in the air, loaded with innuendo, as if to emphasize topics Ava should and shouldn't discuss. In Marcus's mind, alarm bells were ringing. This woman clearly had far deeper knowledge than he had anticipated. But instead of adjusting his attitude, he doubled down on his condescension, his fragile power threatened. Let's take a quick break, Marcus abruptly announced. Kyle, Brenda, bring in some coffee. He turned to Ava with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. How do you take your coffee? Lots of cream and sugar, I presume. The heavy racial implications spread throughout the room. The executives exchanged glances, some looking uncomfortable, others subtly amused. Ava registered every micro-expression, every unspoken exchange. She had seen all of this hundreds of times. It didn't surprise her, it only solidified her resolve. She slowly closed her leather brief, the soft leather making a faint sound in the sudden silence. Her gaze met Marcus's, directly unwavering. Before we proceed, she said, her voice still eerily calm, I'd like to see your diversity and inclusion statistics for executive-level positions. Marcus's jaw tightened. He realized this woman would not be easily dismissed as he had intended. The meeting resumed in a slightly larger conference room. Marcus had called in reinforcements, including Jamal Thompson, Terra Nova's diversity officer, a black man, and the only person of color in the building holding a position above entry level. Jamal will walk us through Terra Nova's diversity initiatives. Marcus announced, his tone overtly gracious and accommodating. Jamal stood clearly prepared. Terra Nova is committed to fostering an inclusive environment. Our hiring of underrepresented minorities has increased by 8% annually. He clicked through slides displaying carefully curated photos of smiling employees from various backgrounds. What is the retention rate for those employees? Ava asked. Jamal stammered. I don't have those specific figures. And the promotion pipeline? Ava pressed on. Over the past 5 years, how many people of color have moved into senior leadership roles? We've implemented mentorship programs that we believe will yield results in the future. Marcus interrupted. We're making progress. Rome wasn't built in a day. His dismissive wave cut off any further discussion. Just then, the conference room door opened. 5 more executives entered, all white men in their 50s. Marcus immediately brightened, standing to offer warm handshakes and slaps on the back. Jokes about recent golf outings flowed freely through the room. Ava sat there completely unacknowledged for 3 full minutes. When Marcus finally remembered her presence, his introduction was loaded with insinuation. Gentlemen, this is Ava. She's here today to discuss our diversity initiatives. Not Ms. Sterling, not a potential investor, but just Ava, reduced to a first name and a presumed agenda. The executives offered perfunctory nods. 2 didn't even bother to make eye contact. One executive, Richard Hayes, according to his name tag, leaned towards a colleague and whispered loud enough for Ava to hear, "Just a diversity quota. Play along and she'll be gone before lunch." Ava noted this without any overt reaction, though her pen made a faint mark in her notebook. "Perhaps you'd like to share your story with the group?" Marcus offered Ava, his tone condescending. "I'm sure everyone would be fascinated to hear about your journey." The implication was painfully clear. Her value in this room was as a token, not an equal business partner. When Ava began to discuss market trends instead, Marcus immediately interrupted. "That's not really what everyone's interested in," he said with a forced smile. "We have plenty of financial analysts. What we want to hear is your perspective as a..." He trailed off, but his meaning couldn't have been clearer. Just then, a well-dressed white man in a tailored suit walked into the room. Marcus immediately stood, extending his hand with genuine respect. "Daniel, so glad you could join us." After warmly greeting Daniel Price, Marcus turned back to Ava. Their eyes met, and in that moment Marcus made his choice. He deliberately put his hands behind his back and stated pointedly, "I don't shake hands with staff." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Some executives looked away, embarrassed but unwilling to intervene. Others subtly smirked, implicitly complicit. Ava showed no shock or hurt, only a calm, assessing gaze. In her mind, this was not a fresh wound, but a confirmation. This was precisely the proof she had come to find, the pattern she had encountered throughout her 20 years, climbing the arduous financial ladder. Without breaking eye contact with Marcus, Ava reached for her phone and sent a single message to her waiting team: "Execute." "If you'll excuse me," Ava said calmly, rising from her seat. "I need to use the restroom." Marcus waved dismissively, already having turned his focus back to Daniel. The men immediately resumed their conversation, as if Ava had never been there. In the privacy of an empty restroom stall, Ava allowed herself 3 deep breaths, not from stress, but for focus. Her hand remained steady as she dialed a number. "Ethan," she said when her CFO picked up. "Activate phase 1. Both options are ready." "Ethan confirms." Ethan Riley's voice came through the phone, professional and decisive. "Investment package or strategic withdrawal?" "The team is already parked 2 blocks away," Ethan continued. "Just say the word and we'll start signaling concerns to key market analysts." "Begin subtle market signals now," Ava instructed. "Make it look natural, just enough to catch attention without being obvious. And the full documentation package, have it ready. I've recorded everything. They've given us exactly what we needed." She ended the call looking at her reflection in the mirror. The woman in the mirror had navigated rooms like these throughout her career. Rooms where her competence was questioned, her presence resented, her worth diminished. But today was different. Today she wielded a power they had never bothered to recognize. While Ava Sterling calmly prepared for her strike in the privacy of the restroom back in the conference room, Marcus Thorne was still basking in self-congratulation. He chuckled with his team leisurely loosening his tie. "Another diversity box checked," he said, his voice laced with sarcasm. "Corporate relations will be pleased we made time for this meeting. Now about the Peterson acquisition." Just then Kyle, his assistant, rushed in, tablet in hand, his face etched with worry. "Sir, there's something you need to see." Marcus frowned, annoyed at the interruption. "What is it, Kyle?" Kyle's trembling hand offered him the screen. "Terra Nova's stock. It's unexpectedly dropped 1.2% in the last 15 minutes. No negative news has been released, no clear explanation." Marcus glanced at the screen, a fleeting concern crossing his face, but he quickly dismissed it. "Probably just normal market fluctuation," he said dismissively. "Nothing to worry about." Despite his words, a vague unease gnawed at him. When Ava returned to the meeting room, the atmosphere had subtly shifted. A few executives were checking their phones. Computer screens displayed red stock tickers. Anxiety was spreading through the space, though they tried clumsily to conceal it. "Is something wrong?" Ava asked innocently, her eyes scanning each tense face. "Nothing for you to concern yourself with," Marcus replied curtly. "Just a bit of market volatility." He paused, realizing he had never actually addressed her by her last name. "Listen, you," he faltered again. "I think we've spoken enough. I'm sure you understand we have real business matters to attend to." "Of course," Ava agreed pleasantly, an almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. "I just need one final private meeting with you, Mr. Thorne. Then I'll leave." Annoyed but eager to conclude the visit, Marcus agreed. He led Ava to his office, simultaneously instructing his team to investigate the stock's volatility. As the door to Marcus Thorne's office closed, Ava's demeanor subtly shifted. Still composed, but now she exuded an unmistakable resolve. "I'd like to review my experience at Terra Nova today." She began, her voice low but authoritative. "I was kept waiting for 45 minutes, directed to a side area instead of your VIP lounge, given childish explanations of basic concepts, repeatedly asked if I was following along. Interrupted when discussing financials addressed by my first name, told my perspective was only valuable as a token, and finally explicitly denied a handshake with the remark that you don't shake hands with staff." Marcus began to interject, but Ava continued methodically, her voice never rising. "I legally recorded our entire interaction, as Georgia is a one-party consent state for recordings." Marcus's face darkened. His phone vibrated with an incoming call flagged, "Urgent, major shareholder." His phone vibrated again, then again. He glanced between his phone and Ava, the struggle evident on his face. "I need to take this," he finally said, no longer bothering with false politeness. While Marcus spoke in hushed, urgent tones, Ava observed his office. The intentionally prominent displays of success trophies, photos with celebrities and politicians, and the striking absence of any women or people of color in leadership roles depicted in the company photos. "You mean a 3% drop?" Marcus hissed into the phone. "No news, no announcements at all." He listened, his face growing increasingly strained. Sterling Capital Group, never heard of them. Why would they? He fell silent, listening. His eyes darted to Ava, then back to his desk. He furiously typed on his computer keyboard, his complexion paling as he read something on the screen. Ava could follow his discovery in real time. The frantic search for Ava Sterling. The horror evident as the results appeared on his screen. Founder and CEO of Sterling Capital Group, one of the nation's most powerful black-owned investment firms. Over $50 billion in assets under management, notorious for divesting from companies with toxic cultures. Marcus ended the call abruptly and stood, his entire demeanor transformed. The arrogance vanished, replaced by sheer panic. He rushed around his desk towards Ava. "Ms. Sterling," he began, his voice suddenly obsequious, "I believe there's been a terrible misunderstanding. If I had known who you were—" "There's been no misunderstanding," Ava interrupted, straightening to meet his gaze. "You made it very clear who you thought I was and how you felt that person should be treated." She moved towards the door. Marcus Thorne tried to block her path. "Please, let's discuss this privately," he pleaded, desperation evident. "I'm sure we can reach a mutually beneficial agreement." The commotion attracted attention. Employees in the hallway paused, watching. Some discreetly pulled out their phones, recording. Security guards, who had barely noticed Ava's presence hours earlier, now stood rigidly unsure whether to intervene as their CEO grew increasingly agitated. "The time for that conversation was when you thought I was nobody." Ava stated, her composure unshaken, despite Marcus's looming presence. He reached out as if to touch her arm, then stopped, aware of the witnesses. "You can't just—" "I can," Ava said simply. "And I am." She moved past him with her accustomed grace, the movement of someone who had navigated countless obstacles throughout her career. As Ava walked towards the exit, Terra Nova's stock price flashed red on the lobby screen, its decline accelerating to 7%. Whispers spread through Terra Nova headquarters like electricity. Employees huddled around computer screens, frantically searching for Ava Sterling and Sterling Capital Group. Articles popped up on screens throughout the building. Sterling Capital's history of ethical divestment. Ava Sterling built a $50 billion empire by demanding corporate accountability. Companies lose billions after Sterling Capital withdraws support. In the executive boardroom, Marcus Thorne paced in a panic. How did no one know who she was? How could this happen? The meeting was only listed as O. Sterling, potential investor. "Sir," Kyle explained, his voice trembling. "There was no detailed brief because you said it was just a diversity obligation meeting." "We need to control the damage now," Marcus snapped. The executive team, who had been relaxed and jovial moments before, now sat stiff with tension. Richard Hayes, who had whispered about diversity quotas, offered his solution. "We need to find dirt on Sterling. Everyone has secrets. We'll find hers. Threaten to release it if she doesn't back down." Marcus considered this desperation clouding his judgment. At the same time, Ava returned to her car, where Ethan Riley and her executive team awaited. On tablets and laptops, they monitored Terra Nova's market position in real time. "Our initial signals alone caused this drop," Ethan explained, showing her the analytics. "No public announcement, just strategic calls expressing concerns to key analysts. Imagine what will happen when we officially announce our decision." Another team member handed Ava a leather-bound brief. "All documentation of today's discrimination professionally transcribed with timestamps. We've included contextual industry statistics on executive diversity for comparison," Ethan added. Ava examined it meticulously. "This isn't just about one company or one man," she stated. "This is about changing patterns." The narrative was no longer a mere business encounter. It had transformed into a battle of wills, of opposing values, and of power wielded for vastly different ends. And Ava Sterling, who had been underestimated, now held the key to transforming an industry. In Terra Nova's executive boardroom, Marcus Thorne's phone rang incessantly. Board members demanded explanations. The PR team hastily drafted a statement focusing on communication misunderstandings and Terra Nova's commitment to diversity, but without acknowledging any specific wrongdoing. Marcus tried to call Ava directly, but was met with a professional, cold voice from the switchboard. "Sterling Capital Group, how may I help you?" "This is Leonard Harrison. I need to speak to Ava Sterling immediately." Marcus almost yelled into the phone. "I apologize, Mr. Harrison. the executive assistant calmly replied. Ms. Sterling only takes calls from prospective and respected business partners, not staff, as you put it. Would you like to leave a message? Before Marcus could react, urgent news alerts simultaneously popped up on every screen in the boardroom. Sterling Capital Group had issued a statement. We are reevaluating all potential investments in companies that do not demonstrate a clear culture of inclusivity. Terra Nova wasn't specifically named, but the timing spoke volumes. Marcus received a calendar invitation on his phone. Final investment decision meeting, Sterling Capital Group, 9:00 a.m. tomorrow. It came with a note. You may bring an attorney. The next morning, the financial shows on Morning Financial were abuzz with speculation. Terra Nova Technologies experienced an unexplained 12% stock drop yesterday, a CNBC anchor reported. Sources suggest a major potential investor witnessed concerning behavior from CEO Marcus Thorne, though details remain unconfirmed. Marcus Thorne arrived at his office to find the company in crisis. Through the glass walls of the main conference room, he saw the board of directors had convened without inviting him. Their sweeping gestures and grim faces said it all. Kyle cautiously approached his arms, laden with papers. These just came in, sir. Emails from major shareholders demanding an explanation for yesterday's stock volatility and the rumors about Sterling Capital. Marcus snatched the pile of papers, scanning the messages with growing dread. Words danced before his eyes. Deep concern, fiduciary responsibility, potential leadership change, emergency shareholder meeting. Across town at Sterling Capital Group's downtown headquarters, Ava was conducting her own strategy meeting. Her team reviewed documentation and prepared for the impending confrontation. Are we being too harsh? A young team member asked. Terra Nova employs thousands. This could affect more than just Mr. Thorne. Ava considered the question carefully. Systemic change requires consequences, she explained. Companies understand one language fluently: money. Employees deserve better leadership, and the market deserves transparency about the kind of culture their investments are supporting. Her mind drifted through her own career journey, graduating at the top of her class, but only being offered assistant positions, while her male classmates received associate titles, working day and night to prove her worth, being mistaken for administrative staff at every company she worked for. Building her own investment firm from scratch, while prospective clients doubted her credentials at every turn. Back at Terra Nova, Marcus Thorne was in a closed-door meeting with his legal team, preparing for his meeting with Ava. We need to save the stock price, he insisted, clearly revealing his priorities. Promise any diversity initiative they want. Just make this go away. His lawyer looked skeptical. My advice is to appear remorseful without admitting specific fault. Any explicit admission could trigger shareholder lawsuits. On social media, the hashtag #TerraNovaToxic began to trend. Anonymous employees shared their stories. I was told to straighten my hair if I wanted a client-facing role. My voice was mocked in executive meetings. HR buried 3 discrimination complaints last year alone. In his private bathroom, Marcus rehearsed his apology in front of the mirror. Ms. Sterling, I am truly sorry if anything I said was misunderstood. His phone interrupted the rehearsal. The chairman of the board was calling. Marcus, we've discovered previous discrimination complaints against you that were withheld from the board. Why are we only learning about these now? As Marcus prepared to leave for his meeting with Ava, security arrived at his office. With a directive from the board, he was temporarily suspended, effective immediately. Sterling Capital Group's headquarters was a stark contrast to Terra Nova's flashy tech campus. The building was elegant, yet understated its power, evident in its prime location, rather than ostentatious design. The main lobby displayed artwork by underrepresented artists, and a wall that showcased the firm's commitment Building Wealth Through Values. Marcus Thorne arrived precisely at 900 a.m. His usual entourage was conspicuously absent. Only his lawyer accompanied him. Both men looked tense in the elevator ride to the meeting floor. The receptionist greeted them politely, but without warmth. "Ms. Sterling will see you in a moment. Please wait here." She gestured to a seating area. Marcus repeatedly checked his watch as minutes turned into a quarter hour, then half an hour, then precisely 45 minutes. The exact amount of time Ava had been kept waiting at Terra Nova. His lawyer whispered warnings to remain calm as Marcus's jaw grew tighter with each passing minute. When they were finally ushered into the conference room, Marcus stepped through the door and froze. This was not the small meeting he had expected. Ava sat at the head of a massive table now, dressed in a perfectly tailored power suit, subtle jewelry hinting at wealth without ostentation. Around her were her entire executive team, the firm's board of directors, and most surprisingly, representatives from 3 other major investment firms. The power dynamic could not have been more reversed from their initial encounter. Here Ava was clearly in command, her authority evident in the respectful way everyone deferred to her presence. "Mr. Thorne," she said without rising, "have a seat." Marcus attempted to take control of the narrative immediately. "Ms. Sterling, I'd like to begin by expressing my sincere regret for any misunderstandings during your visit. Terra Nova values diversity, and if I—" "This isn't about misunderstandings," Ava calmly interrupted. "This is about accountability." She opened a folder in front of her. Sterling Capital Group was considering not just a $2 billion investment in Terra Nova Technologies, but also a potential acquisition of the entire company. Marcus's lawyer stirred uncomfortably beside him. "We have been researching Terra Nova for 6 months," Ava continued. "Financial analysis, market position, competitive landscape, product pipeline, talent management. Yesterday's visit was the final assessment, a character evaluation of leadership." She slid a thick document across the table. "This documents not just yesterday's incidents, but a pattern throughout Terra Nova's entire culture." Marcus flipped through the pages, sworn testimonies from former employees, internal communications, salary disparity statistics, and promotion records, all revealing systematic bias. His face paled. "How did you get these internal documents?" "Former employees are silenced by NDAs, but they can legally speak to potential investors conducting due diligence," Ava explained. "Your legal department should have advised you of that exception." One of the other investment firm representatives leaned forward. "Sterling Capital approached us 3 months ago about a new initiative. We are collectively establishing investment standards that include corporate culture evaluations. Companies with discriminatory practices will no longer receive funding, regardless of their profit potential." Another added, "Terra Nova is our test case. Miss Sterling volunteered to conduct the final assessment personally." Marcus Thorne suddenly understood the complete reversal. Ava wasn't seeking his approval or validation. She was determining if he was worthy of her money. His lawyer urgently whispered in his ear, but he barely heard him. "Sterling Capital was founded with a specific mission." Ava stated, her voice carrying a quiet authority. "For generations, people who look like me have had to beg for a seat at tables owned by people who look like you. I built my own table." She gestured to the executives around her, diverse in gender, race, and age. "We manage over $50 billion in assets. The alliance of firms present in this room controls over $200 billion in investable capital." The gravity of the situation dawned on Marcus. Terra Nova's future quite literally lay in the hands of the woman he hadn't bothered to shake hands with yesterday. "This is reverse discrimination." Marcus tried to say desperation in his voice. "You're targeting me because I'm a white male in a position of power." Ava's expression didn't change as she pressed a button on a remote. The room's speakers played his voice clearly. "I don't shake hands with staff." The recording continued with his other comments throughout the day, each more damning than the last. When the audio finished, silence filled the room. Marcus's lawyer scribbled something on a notepad and slid it to him. Marcus ignored it. "What do you want?" he finally asked, defeat evident in his voice. Ava slid another document across the table. Marcus expected a pathetically low acquisition offer. Instead, he found a comprehensive list of mandatory changes to Terra Nova's corporate governance, hiring practices, and company culture. "This is not a negotiation," Ava declared as Marcus read the document. "This is the only path if Terra Nova wishes to avoid a complete investor boycott." Terra Nova's downfall at the hands of Marcus Thorne unfolded like a controlled demolition, systematic and thorough. Day 1. Terra Nova's board of directors unanimously voted to permanently remove Marcus Thorne. Their press release cited leadership incongruent with company values, without further detail. They appointed CFO Eleanor Vance as interim CEO, their first female executive. The stock stabilized at 15% below its prior value, a significant loss, but a sign that the market was in wait-and-see mode. Day 2. Sterling Capital Group shared select documentation with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, triggering a formal investigation into Terra Nova's hiring and promotion practices. The documents were carefully redacted to protect individual privacy while establishing clear patterns of discrimination. Day 3. Former employees began to speak out. NDAs that once prevented them from discussing workplace culture became unenforceable due to the federal investigation. Stories of systemic marginalization of women and minorities, particularly in technical and leadership roles, began to surface, sending shockwaves through the industry. In Terra Nova's executive boardroom, the remaining executives grappled with the scale of the crisis. Eleanor Vance, with her neatly pulled-back hair and resolute gaze, led an urgent strategy session. "We have 3 paths," she explained to the somber group. "One is to fight the accusations and lose both in court and in the market. 2 is to make superficial changes to weather the storm. Or 3 is to commit to genuine transformation." Richard Hayes, Marcus's closest ally, argued for resistance. "This is blackmail. They're using social pressure to dictate how we run our business." "No," Eleanor countered. "They're using market forces to assign a cost to discrimination. There's a difference." Concurrently at Sterling Capital, Ava and her team monitored the developments. They neither confirmed nor denied their role in Terra Nova's upheaval, maintaining a strategic silence while the other company determined its own response. "They're at a crossroads," Ethan Riley observed. Marcus's culture was deeply ingrained. Changing it means admitting how many were complicit. Ava nodded. "We are not seeking Terra Nova's destruction. Their technology has value, but leadership creates culture, and culture determines who contributes and who benefits. That needs to be broken apart." By day 5, Terra Nova's board of directors met for the most pivotal decision in the company's history. The debate lasted for hours. Some older members resisted viewing the demands as surrender. Younger directors recognized the imperative of business evolution. The pivotal moment arrived unexpectedly. David Lee, a typically quiet board member, spoke up. "My daughter graduated top of her class in computer science from MIT, he said softly. She worked for a company just like ours for 18 months. Her ideas were attributed to male colleagues. She was interrupted in meetings, assigned administrative tasks, despite her technical role, and eventually left the industry entirely." He looked around the table. "How many brilliant minds have we lost because we've created environments where they cannot thrive? This isn't just about lawsuits or stock prices. This is about whether we are truly building the best company we can be. His personal testimony shifted the atmosphere. The board voted 11-2 to implement all changes stipulated by the document from Sterling Capital. Day 7. Terra Nova announced a comprehensive overhaul. Their public statement outlined specific commitments, transparent salary bands to eliminate gender and racial pay gaps, anonymous resume reviews to mitigate hiring bias, mentorship programs for underrepresented employees, and a complete restructuring of leadership to ensure diverse perspectives at every level. Crucially, they committed to regular independent audits of their culture and practices with results tied to executive compensation. The tech industry reacted with shock and rapid adaptation. CEOs convened emergency meetings to assess their own vulnerabilities. HR departments revisited diversity initiatives previously treated as tick-box exercises. Venture capital firms began incorporating culture assessments into their due diligence processes. Meanwhile, Marcus Thorne attempted damage control. He arranged meetings with former colleagues and industry contacts, framing himself as a victim of woke capitalism. Initially, some privately sympathized behind closed doors. Then Bloomberg published an investigative article titled, "A Pattern of Prejudice: Thorne's History of Discrimination Complaints." The piece detailed settlement agreements and NDAs from 3 prior companies, proving that Terra Nova's board had overlooked documented concerns during his hiring. Marcus's former allies quickly distanced themselves overnight, unwilling to risk association with a toxicity that now carried measurable financial costs. Ava also faced her own challenges. Critics accused her of employing power tactics no different than what she condemned. A CNBC reporter interviewed her directly. "Some say you're using financial coercion to impose your values. How is that different from the power imbalance you claim to fight against?" Ava responded without hesitation. "The difference is, I'm using this power to open doors, not close them. Power itself isn't the problem. The issue is whether it's used to expand or restrict opportunity." This exchange shifted the narrative. Business publications began examining the financial impact of exclusive cultures, quantifying the lost innovation and talent drain. Harvard Business Review published The Inclusion Dividend, documenting higher returns from companies with diverse leadership. Internally at Terra Nova, the transformation proved challenging but genuine. Some executives resigned rather than adapt. Others embraced the change with surprising fervor, tacitly admitting they had felt uneasy with Marcus's approach, but feared professional repercussions if they challenged him. Eleanor Vance implemented a culture reset program developed with outside experts. Initial resistance gave way to cautious engagement as employees realized the commitment went beyond public relations. Anonymous feedback channels revealed persistent issues, but also a growing sense of optimism. 3 months after Marcus's removal, Eleanor presented preliminary results to the board. Improved employee retention rates, an increase in applications from diverse candidates, and a gradual stock recovery as the market recognized the stabilization. "This is not a quick fix," she cautioned. "We are breaking down patterns established over years, but the trajectory is clear." Behind the scenes, Sterling Capital monitored progress through multiple channels. Ava received weekly reports from her team and the independent auditors sent to Terra Nova. "They're making real strides," Ethan reported during their quarterly review. "The structural changes are being implemented as agreed." "The question remains whether to proceed with the investment once they've met all conditions," Ethan asked. Ava considered this carefully. "Our goal wasn't punishment, but transformation. If they demonstrate true change, withholding investment would contradict our own mission. We need to recognize progress as clearly as we identified the problem." 6 months after the confrontation, Terra Nova announced its new permanent executive team. The leadership reflected genuine diversity, not through tokenism, but by recognizing previously overlooked talent within the organization and strategic external hires. Eleanor Vance, now confirmed as permanent CEO, spoke to employees and shareholders. Today marks not an end, but the beginning of Terra Nova's transformation. We have learned that inclusivity is not a peripheral value, but a core business strategy. Tomorrow we will announce one final major change that will showcase our sincere commitment to this new direction. That evening, Sterling Capital Group received an unexpected proposal from Terra Nova's board, a partnership that would pioneer new industry standards for corporate cultural accountability.